Welcome to God's Land Empire YouTube channel, and in today's video I will be telling you all you need to know about the history of land title in Nigeria. See, after watching this video you would not be confused when you hear some titles when it concerns real estate. You would have full clarity on everything you need to know about the history of land title in Nigeria. And once again, my name is Timothy Moyofola and I am the CEO of God's Land Empire. So let's go right into it. Let's hit the nail on the head. In 1978 was when the Land Use Act was introduced, and the Land Use Act states that all lands belong to the government. I want to explain to you why was this Land Use Act introduced, because in the beginning it was not so. If you know, you know. But let's continue. So that means that before 1978, all lands do not belong to the government. It belongs to the original families that own it. Like all these families, they are the ones that owns the land. But this is what happened. So when government wants to construct buildings, schools, and all those infrastructures that are needed for the society to be habitable for us, they would go and meet this family and pay them to get these lands from them. However, it got to a point that these families were extorting the government. The government would go to the land, even though nobody was living there, the land is fallow, and government would want to do stuff with the land. And the family would say, you have to pay us this so amount of money before you can do this in this community. And I'm sure you are familiar with this kind of case whereby some big men or rich people will just go to a community, want to bring this to your community, and the elders of the land will say, you have to pay all this amount before we will allow you to come and bring that development to our city, even though they know that those people would benefit them. So these are how these families were treating the government. And there's a popular case that happened in 1911 between Amadou Tijani and the government. That time they wanted to construct their papa port, and the land was lying fallow, and government started their construction on the land. But Amadou Tijani sued the government to court, and at the first time he didn't win the case, but later after dragging it, they took it to higher courts, courts in several levels. He later won the case, and government had to pay him a huge sum of amount for them to use the land. So that's how government now said, let's give ourselves sense. Even though we want to do things that will benefit them, they would keep taking advantage of us. So that's why they came up with the policy and say all lands belong to the government. And that is when the Land Use Act was introduced in 1978. Now you understand why we have Land Use Act. You understand the history. Let's check out the common titles you will find in your day-to-day real estate transaction. And the first one I'll be talking about is the deed of assignment. Now, the major thing I want you to know is you don't have to cramp anything I'm going to say. As you can see, I'm not reading this from a book. When you understand it, you understand the concept behind it. When you see it anywhere, anytime, you are able to know, okay, this is this. So the deed of assignment. Now, the deed of assignment is the document that transfer the ownership of a land from the seller to the buyer. I'll come again. The deed of assignment is that document that when they give it to you, it transfers the ownership of the land from the seller, the person selling it, to the buyer, to the person buying. Now, receipt is not what does that. It's the deed. If you buy a land and you have receipt, the ownership of the land, yes, you've done business, but the ownership of the land has not been transferred to you. So that's the work of the deed of assignment, and it's a very important document. In fact, if you buy land and you don't have deed of assignment, you've not bought land, you've only bought, you thought you bought land. The second one I'll be talking about is the survey. Now, for the survey, we have two types of survey. We have the provisional survey and the registered survey. However, before I talk about the provisional and the register, I first want to tell you what survey is. Survey, just like the name implies, is what shows you the exact details of your land, which is the exact mapped out area of your land. So when you buy land, we talked about that deed of assignment transfer the ownership of the land to you. The survey is what would show that this is the exact area perimeter that was transferred to you, because you can't just say I bought land and the land is at Oroshoki or the land is at Kano or this area in Kano. No, there must be a details, a document that shows that, okay, this is the exact area, this is the shape of your land, this is what is mapped out for you. The good thing about survey is if you give survey to someone if you buy a land in, let's assume Ekpe, Lagos now, and the surveyor is in Kano, and you give him that survey of that your land, the surveyor can take the survey and locate where exactly your land is in Ekpe. So the survey is what shows that actual details of the mapped out area of the land that you've bought. Now, I said we have the registered survey and provisional survey. What's the difference between the two? Just like the names imply, the provisional survey is just something that you have provisionally. You know, there is this trend now, people are jackpotting and everything, and when people want to jackpot, they get admission. Some admissions are called provisional admission. The meaning of that is this admission is what you hold on to now before you get the original certified admission. So provisional survey is just what you do to know the exact area of your land that is mapped out. While registered survey is the one you do from the government. For provisional survey, you don't have to go to the government, just take a surveyor, take it to the land, map out the area, they would come out with the document. For but registered survey, that one is done with the government. So you have to actually go to the government to do your registered survey. So that is the registered survey is recognized by the government, while provisional survey is for yourself. However, when you want to process your document also, they need those details to process it. Now let's move to the third one, which is called contract of sales. Now, contract of sales normally comes in place in real estate when you buy land in installments. When you buy land in installments, if you are buying the land and you have the whole money to pay at once, you might not necessarily need contract of sales. But if you are buying the land like I have this amount I want to pay now, then I'll balance the rest later, that's where contract of sales comes in. Now, what is contract of sales? Just like the name imply, like it's the contract, the details of the agreement that binds you and the seller on how the transaction will take place. So it's in your contract of sales that you see details like I'm buying this land and I'm making a certain amount of deposit and I will pay the remaining balance in so amount of days or so amount of weeks or so amount of months or years. So contract of sales is what contains that details that you and the seller have both agreed that will bind both of you in this transaction. So contract of sales is also what binds the seller from not selling the land to another person after you've made your initial deposit. Although you need to be conscious of this thing so that it will be included in your contract of sale. Normally it should be included, but you know, some people might want to play smart. So, but if you are conscious of it, definitely they will include it. So that is just what contract of sales is all about. And the next one is the C of O. I know even the baby that they gave birth to yesterday, I've heard C of O, even though the person might not know the meaning. So the C of O means the certificate of occupancy. What is C of O? The best way I can explain it to you is, see, when you buy land, before I tell you the meaning, after that's the meaning, but I want to explain what it is so that you can understand it. When you buy land from, let's assume Mr. A bought land from Mr. B and Mr. C now bought it from Mr. A, like, you know, there has been several transfers. Government is more aware that you guys are doing anything on that. In the eyes of the government, the land is still owned by the original family that owns it through tradition or because they are the first person to come on the land. In the eyes of the government, that's the family that's owning it. Now, C of O is the act in which you go to the government and tell government, like, I, Mr. So, have bought the land from Mr. So, and I want you to be aware of the transaction. Now, what the government would now do is to give you certificate of occupancy that you, Mr. So, that have bought the land, you can now occupy this land for the next 99 years, not forever. See, before you can hold land to perpetuity before 1978, and that's why this 1978 comes. That's why this is when they introduce everything like that. You can't own land to perpetuity again, and it's not only in Nigeria. I was scrolling through Instagram one the other day, and someone was saying you can come and buy land in Bali. You know, you should know Bali. And I was checking the comment section. People were saying you can't buy house rather. So people were saying you can't even buy house in Bali. That you can only, like, you can lease the land for 35 years. That is even 30, as a foreigner, you can't buy it for more than 35 years. According to, but in Nigeria, you can't buy land to perpetuity. You would only own it for the next 99 years. So that is what C of O is, your certificate of occupancy. So it's a process whereby you let the government know about this transaction, and it has its own major advantage. And one of the major advantage of C of O is when you get your certificate of occupancy from the government, and maybe in the future governments need your land or they want to do something on your land, you will get compensated for it. It's not like government will just take your land and they will not, because they are aware that the land is now yours and that you bought it. So they have a duty to compensate you if they ever should need that land. That's one of the major advantage of C of O. So I hope you understand what's your certificate of occupation. Just like this certificate is showing that you are occupying this land for the next 99 years. Now let me tell you something that you should, if you are buying a land and it has C of O already, one thing you should take note of is when was the C of O given? Because the way it works is, if I buy a land now and I've done the C of O and I want to sell the land, let's assume I bought the land in 2014, I did the C of O in 2014. Now the government has given me that I own this land for the next 99 years, and this is 2024. I want to sell the land to Mr. B. Now, in the process of selling the land, if Mr. B bought the land from me, Mr. B will not own the land for another 99 years. So it will have to subtract the first 10 years that I've used on the land, then Mr. B will now own it for 89 years. So if you want to buy a land and it has C of O already, you must be conscious of that part, because it was introduced in 1978, so we are not even yet in 2078. So most land will say have maybe like 50 years on it, and that's why they would say what you buy in land is the interest on the land, which is the interest is how many years you have left to spend on this land. So those things come into place by the time you go to government to tell them, I want you to be aware of this transaction that has taken place. Now, and the next thing here is the governor's consent. Governor's consent is the easiest to understand if you already understand the certificate of occupancy. So what is governor's consent? Because you cannot do 2 C of O on the land, you can only do 1 on the land. And by the way, if you are gaining value from this video, I believe you should subscribe to this YouTube channel, because the things I've told you today, I'm sure by now you understand what it means. So if you are gaining value, then to cost you nothing to subscribe, because if you subscribe, you are saving yourself from burning your hard-earned money on fraudulent real estate transactions. So let me go right into it. Governor's consent. Like I said, you cannot have 2 C of O on the land. So if I buy land and I've done the C of O, as I was explaining the other time, and I want to sell it to Mr. B, in this case, if Mr. B wants the government to be aware of this transaction that I've sold the land, because I've already told government that I bought. Now, if Mr. B wants the government to be aware that I've sold it to him, so when Mr. B goes to the governor, what governor will do is like, okay, we are selling the land to Mr. B. I consent. I'm aware. That's the meaning of consent. I'm aware of this transaction. So governor will consent to it. Like, I know that Mr. A is now selling it to Mr. B, and that is the meaning of governor's consent in the simplest term. So when you get your vote on the land, the next document you can get on it again, if you sell it 20 times, the governor's consent. If another person buys it, it's still that governor's consent that will be given. And these are the major land titles that you come across in your real estate transaction. Now, in some cases, instead of this deed of assignment, you might be saying deed of sublease, deed of conveyance. Those are just the variations in which it is. But if you understand it basically like this, then you won't have a problem when it comes to history of land titles in Nigeria. So if you find this video valuable, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. And if you have any questions you want to gain clarity on, or anything you are confused generally about in real estate, then you can drop a comment or send a DM to the number showing on your screen, or just hit us up. I await you in our DM.